A cold, cold night, especially in the deep south, with temperatures down in the 20s and below the freezing mark, almost all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. In the meantime, we've got dry air at least, and the cold settling into the east. There's some rain in Maine, but not on the plain. All of that, and kind of now a questionable weekend outlook. We'll talk about that on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, serving the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. And the cold should remind you that winter will be here soon, and you might need salt. And Omni is Long Island's largest provider of rock salt. And if you can't get a hold of it where you are, drive over to Omni and pick some of that up, or maybe you're doing some landscaping, or maybe you're just stocking up on supplies just in case there's adverse weather. It's all there, and the lowest prices anywhere. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
And where am I? Where did I go? I disappeared somewhere. There you are. There I am. Okay. Hi there.
Hello.
Welcome everybody to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Joe's got a huge smile on his face. He's just bursting with joy tonight, are we not? Yes, exactly. By the way, this should make you burst with joy because we've complained about it a long time ago, and then just sort of forgot about it. But I noticed, Joe, this weekend that more than a few National Weather Service forecast offices have gone back to the old radar, and they put that new interactive radar that everybody hated. They've got a separate link for it that if you want to go look at it, you can click on the link. But on the pages now, if you go to the Upton page, for example, it's the old radar where you could see the echoes clearly, you could see the counties clearly, you could see the state lines clearly. So I think that's something we should celebrate.
It's an improvement over what they had provided to us over the past year, certainly. And it's nice also that they give you the option that you can go north or south or west or east and get a similar view from, let's say, Philadelphia or Albany with this. Or if you would like to go to the not so nice imagery of radar, you can also have that option as well. And even there, I think they improved on it a little bit. So we're finally in a situation or in a condition where we could actually look at a radar and understand it and also use it, which is something we were unable to do for a good number of weeks.
Yes. So that problem is solved. I don't know. I didn't see that. What's his name from the Jersey Shore is on the board tonight. I don't see him on the board. But Joe, after the show last night, I called the commissioner and I said, "Commish, if you're going to have the Yankee game on Wednesday, you got to do it earlier in the day, because if you wait and have it at night, and it's going to get really cold, and the batters are going to have their hands are going to sting when they go to hit the ball, all those horrible things that could happen." And he was nice enough, and he just rang down to the Yankee organization and said that the guys on the Joe and Joe show are right. We need to move the game to the day side. So they did. It's
well, they did, and they really. I personally think that they should have had the game played even a little earlier, so they didn't, transition into the cover of darkness as they did when they started it today at 4:07. They should have started it, I think, at 1:07. However, in thinking about it, if they played at 1:07 Eastern time, that would have meant for all of the baseball fans, let's say in Los Angeles or San Francisco or Seattle, the game would have started at 10:07 in the morning.
And they would have, then they would have missed the last hour of the Today Show, which we all know that that's just If you have to endure 4 hours of the Today Show, the last hour in particular, but
Well,
anyhow, they don't watch us, so there's no danger in us being disinvited or even
well,
invited in the
here's
first place.
William Jersey Shore is on the line, and he says Yankees win with like 24 exclamation. But probably the best thing in my life that I've ever done in going to a baseball game. I went to a Met Yankee game some years back, and I was poised at Citi Field in the position. I don't know what you call it now, the loge or the mezzanine, but I knew I was directly above the WFAN radio booth where John Sterling was. And as soon as the Yankees lost that game, I yelled as loud as I could. And maybe it came over the air, maybe it didn't, but it made me feel real good. When the last out was made, I yelled, "Ball game over! Yankees lose! Duh! Yankees lose!" And I hope it came over in some way, shape, or form on WFAN.
Well, on that particular note, let's move away from baseball since there's going to be another game.
It's the only thing that you could talk about really to any significance, because the weather, as we will soon see, especially in our part of the country, is going to be ho hum for the next several days. It'll be cold. That's about the only thing we can jump up and down about is cold, and the places that have freeze warnings and frost warnings and advisories and whatnot. But aside from that, Joe, nothing really to talk about in terms of local weather for a number of days. The tropics are quiet, so let's go at it.
Well, we do have we do have a little complication maybe for Sunday into Sunday evening, which we'll get to in a moment. I have to tell you, I've told people that when they ask me, and I live in North Georgia, and they say how they can't really, it's too hot or whatever it is. I'm like, oh, not up here, it isn't. Well, I never would have believed that on the 18th of October, okay, it's the 18th of October, Joe, and this morning I bottomed out at 30, okay. It was I think down in the airport it got to 28. In the fall here when it cools off, sometimes depending on what side of the mountain you're on, you could be a little warmer, but usually it's the other way around. The Brasstown Bald, which is Georgia's highest peak at just under 5,000 feet, is about, it's not even a 10-minute drive from my house. They got down to 23 this morning. Okay, now I was astounded. My daytime high, Joe, my daytime high here today, 43. I barely got out of the 30s, and here it is, October 18th, not November 18th, not January 18th, October 18th, where I barely could break above 40 for a high. And I saw for Brasstown Bald, the mountain peak, they're forecasting a low of 18 there. So usually I'm about 5 degrees warmer than they are. So that puts me at around 22 or 23 by tomorrow morning. Astounding. I was freezing today, absolutely freezing. I was out at the dog park. I had my Giants shirt on. I had my my jacket on top of that. Oh, and by the way, hang on a second. What I forgot to wear, I'm going to wear it now because it's kind of cold in here. I have my Giants scarf.
Did you by the way, with the temperatures as cold as they have been, have you shut off all the water outside, or
Oh, not yet.
your
No,
pipes freeze or whatever?
not with these temperatures. I mean, if it were to get down in the single digits, I'd shut the pipes off. But it's
You mean
no.
you actually wait? No, you wait until that long to turn off the water?
Well, once this cold air pulls out, I still have a long stretch of days where temperatures are going to be in the 60s. So I don't know. There's no point in me shutting it off now. I still want to wash my truck on one of those days.
Yeah.
So That is, of course, if it doesn't get as it gets bombarded by the hickory nuts that are falling out of the trees, and
Oh,
they sound like bombs when they hit the top of my house. They sound like softballs,
wow.
giant baseballs hitting it. Anyway, welcome to everybody on the chat board on this cold night. If you got a fireplace, I hope you have it going. Uh, I can't. I have a fireplace, but I can't turn it on right now because I brought in all my plants. I have half a dozen avocado trees, and I had to put them someplace. So they're sitting by the fireplace until I can figure out where I can put them strategically in the house. So welcome tonight. Thanks for being here, and welcome to anyone who is new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We're on Monday through Thursdays at 7:35 Eastern Time, Sundays at 11 a.m., and Fridays and Saturdays we usually take off unless there's some sort of storm going on, in which case we will rearrange the schedule, and of course we will let you know. Subscribe and turn on your note. Make sure your notifications are turned on so that you do get informed, or at least gently reminded that the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on, and you have to watch it. So, as you said, Joe, here's the watches and warnings map from the Weather Service tonight, and it's just loaded with frost advisories and freeze warnings and all sorts of cold weather related stuff, but very little of anything else. The one thing that stands out is the what's going on in Maine, because they still have flash flood watches up for eastern Maine, and we also have a couple of counties still under a winter storm warning in northern Michigan.
Right.
Thoughts?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you said Michigan, and there was a long pause. I didn't know whether or not you wanted me to say something, but how could I say something if I'm in total agreement?
I didn't expect you to argue the point, um,
No. Well,
but it does go to the idea that when you get all this cold, dry air like this, it's very hard to get widespread precip, and virtually the whole country is on the quiet side precip wise.
it is. Now you mentioned or alluded to a breakdown of the tranquility by the end of the weekend here in the Northeast, in part due to a breakdown in the tranquility that we see currently over the tropics, that there may be some kind of a system. And I'm not sure whether or not the system that may have an impact or adverse adverse impact on our weather by the end of the weekend up here will actually be of a tropical nature, or whether or not it will be more of a cold core system, maybe just your good old fashioned coastal low that develops. But in any case, the next change of significance doesn't look like it's going to be here for another 4 or 5 days at least, which means 4 or 5 days of, again, very tranquil and very unassuming, quiet weather, which initially will be on the chilly side or cold up at least across much of the east, but we will warm up some. You talk about warming back up into the 60s, Joe, and even here we'll be back into the 60s by the time we get to Friday and Saturday and probably Sunday as well.
You know, for this radar is actually not too unimpressive, especially in and around the Great Lakes. You really could see the rotation of this system, which, by the way, is virtually sitting in the same spot it was yesterday, in the eastern part of Lake Huron. And you still see the snow that's coming in over parts of the upper peninsula of Michigan coming off of Lake Superior. It's just, boy, I tell you, if it were maybe a month, maybe even just a few weeks from now, where if you could have gotten a setup with just slightly colder air, this actually could have turned out to be quite an interesting early season snowstorm. I mean, not that it isn't for those areas in the upper peninsula of Michigan, but we are talking about a small area of geography that's gotten hammered with snow. But we might be in a situation a month from now in a setup like this where all of that would be snow in all of Michigan and all of northern Indiana and northern Ohio. And in the meantime, the way the trough is set up, it still hasn't quite gotten to Maine, and Maine keeps getting these waves of rain coming in from off the Atlantic. Very odd setup.
It is. But again, what we're seeing, that big swirl that you see over the Great Lakes, the associated upper level low pressure system, but eventually that thing will cartwheel, if you will, out to the north and east, and we'll go back into an upper level southwesterly flow toward the end of the week, and that'll send us not only dry air, but also a continuation of not only milder air, but a continuation of the dry air that again will be with us right on through the end of the week and on into the upcoming weekend. Even places that are still seeing clouds and precipitation, be it rain or even wet snow, that will eventually abate over the next 24 to 36 hours.
Yeah, I'm looking at the uh, Weather Service forecast office in Gaylord, Michigan, which is in the northeastern part of the state, and you've got a number of counties on the lower peninsula that have winter weather advisories, and Marquette is sitting under that winter storm warning. And let me just see that this would be additional snowfall. Do they mention it in their forecast? Uh, no, they don't. They don't mention it here. They just winter storm warning in effect until 8 p.m. this evening. So I guess they're looking looking for it not to get extended, at least in Marquette. Maybe more of the snow is inland because Marquette is, they're basically, right, sitting right on the lake, and it's not that cold there. We mentioned yesterday this is cyclonic air. In fact, Marquette Sawyer International Airport is raining right now in 36. So you have to probably get away from the lake in order to participate in the frozen precipitation. And the rest of the radar, just real quick, we've just got a few downpours and a couple of rumbles of thunder along the east coast of Florida, also along the west coast of Florida coming in off the Gulf, and some precip in South Texas that was now looks like more of it is offshore than onshore. And then the rest of the country is bone dry. Satellite, you still see that rotation there. It's just sitting there. I really would have loved to have seen something like this in January. This would have been fun. I mean, this would have been real fun.
Well, January isn't too many months away, Joe. I mean, it's only we're less than 2 months. Excuse me, only a month and a half from the new year. So maybe we'll see a recurrence of this when we get to January. Although, of course, not. Of course, when we get into January, the whole pattern will have broken down and changed to something completely and totally different. But it's nice to dream now, isn't it?
Well, or sometimes they break down, and I always like to look in the fall. You sometimes can get hints of where the pattern's going to be in the wintertime, and um, maybe this will break. All patterns break down, but maybe this one will break down and come back. By the way, I think we have a super chat hit from earlier. Can you check on the chat board? Because Joe Rayo usually monitors the chat board, everybody. So if you have any questions or comments, by all means, place them on the chat board and become part of the conversation because
It is from
oftentimes
it's from,
interesting.
it's a name which I'm sorry if I don't recognize it, but it's one that I don't recognize. But it's from Mark Gilafelta. I don't know if you pronounce the G, if the G is silent or just Latfelter, but thank you very much. And he says, "My welcome back gift, LOL."
That is Mark G. He's one of our regulars.
Okay, I just don't simply recognize. I do recognize a large number of. There's a large number of names to recognize here now, but I just simply don't. But Mark, I appreciate it, and I know Joe does as well. And thank you very much for kicking in tonight or chipping in tonight.
Yes, thank you for hitting super chat. Just a quick, since you mentioned the tropics a little while ago, might as well just get this out of the way. So, no development in the next 48 hours, no development in the next 5 days. There's probably going to be something in the Pacific that's going to develop that the models pick up on. It's got a 90% chance of becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm. This could be another one of these systems that impacts the west coast of Mexico, and then just goes inland and rains itself out into the mountains. WPC with their latest 7-day rainfall forecast, as we take a look. Now, the interesting thing about this is if we look at days 5 and day 6, so day 5 is through Sunday evening, 8 o'clock. So barely any precip into South Jersey, but then overnight into Monday morning, it has a quarter to a half, small area of a quarter to a half. Kind of looks like what happened at the Yankee game the other day, yesterday, where the rain was isolated over the area near New York City and either side of that by a handful of miles, and just sat there. Well, this was I think they probably didn't have all the dayside guidance because the dayside guidance was faster and actually has it raining over much of New Jersey, the Hudson Valley, and southern New England by Sunday afternoon. But we'll get to that in a moment. The total 7-day rainfall amounts are quite healthy in the Pacific Northwest as the trough kind of shifts to the west for a little while, and several inches or more, especially in the mountains. Also up and down the Mississippi Valley, which is pretty good news. I don't know if you've seen it, Joe, but there's areas of the Mississippi River that have just absolutely dried up. So and people are able to walk across. It's so dry.
Wow.
So this is much needed rainfall. So we're looking at fairly large areas of an inch and a half plus from north of St. Louis and then up into the source region of the Mississippi as we take that rain up into the eastern part of the northern plains. So some good news there. And then a stripe of inch and a half or more that extends down from Missouri into Texas. Also some heavy precip up in the central and northern Rockies. And some of this is going to be snow down the road, perhaps. I don't know how much of this is, but down the road there might be maybe an opportunity for some snow there, and we'll take a look at that. Now, here's what we're talking about for Sunday, and you're right. It doesn't look tropical. I think even though the low does kind of start out in the Bahamas, this is Thursday afternoon. You've got the high out offshore. You've got a northeast flow from Bermuda down across Florida. Pressures are low in the Bahamas, and there's like what we call an inverted trough that develops, and out of that you start to see a low that forms. And this is a Saturday night, and then early Sunday morning, there's a low sitting well east of the Florida coast with some rain pushing up into North Carolina, and then it just kind of flies. Looks like it just reforms off the North Carolina coast Sunday morning, Joe, and then runs straight north to just south of New Jersey, east of New Jersey, south of Long Island by Monday morning. All this is, by the way, is the bottom part. If we look at the upper air with this, it's a little weird. But here's our big trough, okay? And instead of the whole trough lifting out, now the models, the European and the GFS, show this, where the bottom part of that trough gets left behind in the southeast. You see it there. And then here it goes. There's an upper little closed low, and then it just lifts northeastward pretty quickly up the coast Sunday afternoon, just in time to ruin Sunday for folks in New Jersey, Long Island, southern New England, and the Hudson Valley.
Well, the thing is that it's not just the GFS that's showing this. The European is showing a system coming up, although that system is, well, actually, it seems about the same on the European. There is a closed low that's over the coastline of, not just the coastline, but eastern North Carolina by Sunday afternoon, and then that system works its way slowly northward and then brings in some rainfall. The European, too, wants to hold off on any precip in the immediate tri-state New York area until after dark on Sunday night, and then it moves the wet weather, the rain in. So hopefully for our local area, we can get through the weekend without any precipitation. And of the 2 weekend days, most definitely Saturday is preferred over Sunday because that'll be the sunnier day. Certainly the drier of the 2 days. Things will begin to really deteriorate some in the late day hours of Sunday and Sunday night. So if the European and the GFS are pretty much on the same page for some kind of a coastal system for late in the weekend, it may very well happen. I would say if you have any outdoor plans, make them. But if you can make them either Saturday or Sunday, I would do it on Saturday based upon the impending or the potential for some unsettled weather late Sunday or Sunday night.
Yeah, the GFS, which actually was more offshore up until the last couple of runs, it has rain by this is at 8 a.m. and by 2 p.m. it's raining just about everywhere, and then lifts up into New England during Sunday night and still a little bit of leftover precip early Monday morning. I want to see whether this holds on for a couple of more runs, if it's real or not. Maybe the low gets tucked in, maybe it's weaker. Um, I was looking at a few of the other models that have a much flatter look to it, and that little short wave that gets left behind is not quite as defined as it is on the European and the GFS. And then as we go through the weekend, there's going to be some snow coming into the Pacific Northwest where, as we said, the trough shifts westward and a low drops down into Wyoming. So some of the white stuff to report on maybe on Sunday's show. We'll be talking about maybe some snow in Montana and in the Dakotas. So that's a nice little low that comes out and goes up into North Dakota. 976, I would say, is a nice looking low, Joe. Don't you think? A lot of isobars.
Pretty tight. What would I say? It's like a tight stem winder, if you will.
Yes, and that goes well to our west. So other than that coastal low for Sunday, if that doesn't happen, you're right. We're not going to get another cold front probably till about Tuesday, and the model wants to kind of hang the front up right on top of us, and then we have to wait for a wave to develop on it before ultimately it gets through by the whole thing moves out by Thursday, and then it turns colder behind it. The whole upper pattern going forward, I'm just kind of actually a little bit. It's kind of an odd pattern in many respects. There's another, if that storm does wind up happening out of this western trough. By the way, you can see the tropical system there. Look at the middle of the picture on the bottom along the Mexican coast, and it just kind of goes inland. And then there's some kind of upper low that's off of California that probably picks up some of that moisture and brings it into Texas. But that next upper low on Tuesday winds up going into eastern Canada. So we do have some troughing that returns back to the east for, say, around the 26th, 27th of the month. And I'm missing some frames as they haven't finished loading. So why don't I go to the U.S. view, because those are in. And that system, anyway, makes its exit. And I don't know, Joe. It's just kind of an odd pattern overall. There's another little trough that forms at the first days of November. It's not a particularly warm pattern. On the other hand, it's not a particularly cold one either. Moving into the long range.
Well, that's I don't know how many. Well, I would have to say of everybody who's on the chat board right now, I think you may agree that the majority are winter weather or snow lovers and would like to see a pattern of colder and possibly snowier weather as we move on toward the month of November and December and on into the upcoming winter season.
It's too early. It's too early.
It doesn't matter. No, but no, I'm not. I'm not saying it's too early for it to happen. I'm just saying that for the majority of the people, and right now we have about 127 viewers online right now, 123 watching. I'd say the majority of them are probably hoping for a pattern change toward colder, and in the weeks to come, possibly even snowier weather.
Yeah, well, it'll happen.
You and I were in that category. I think we were big into storms and especially snow in our younger days. And I don't know how you feel now, but as far as I'm concerned, if we could have another winter like we did a few years ago, where Central Park only had 5 inches for the entire winter season, another one of those winters, I wouldn't be adverse to that. Now people are going to start sending me nasty emails upon saying that, but that's the way I feel.
David Fuller hitting super chat because he had his surgery to fix up his leg, and he says he turns out that his doctor, Dr. Anthony Petrosini, also fixed up New England football players. That is pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah,
That is pretty awesome. So glad everything went well. We knew that it would. And on that note, let's see.
You know the thing about football, Joe, that really I'm amazed at. Here are two teams who are, in essence, especially if they're fighting for some kind of a division championship or whatever, they're out there to not literally but figuratively kill each other. They're out there to go after that football and to grab it and to try to score and whatever else. But if one of the players on one of the teams gets seriously injured, I mean, like when he gets knocked down and he doesn't get up for 5 minutes or something like that, it's amazing to me how both teams come together around the injured player as they're taking him off the field, let's say on a stretch or whatever. Both of them are embracing each other and kind of saying, silently a prayer for the injured player who's on. They all come together, and I said, "This is amazing." 2 minutes ago, they were, as I said, they were like killing each other, and now all of a sudden, because of one player who is in danger of having a serious injury, all of a sudden both teams come together and kind of put their heads together and are basically as one, as opposed to where they were at just moments ago. So
They're professionals, and they want to win their games, but they don't want anybody to get a serious injury on either side.
right,
Northern
right.
Grace by this says if you're ever up to Itasca, Itasca, Minnesota, Itasca, Minnesota, where the Mississippi River starts, it's just a trickle right now up there. I mean, it's just a trickle where it starts. Yes, and then it becomes the mighty river. But if you've seen it on the news, there are whole very large areas where it's dried up, and I don't remember any of this. I don't remember this in the past because years ago you didn't always get news from everywhere. You weren't bombarded with multiple news channels and multiple news cycles, but apparently it has happened before.
Yes. Okay.
I'm just
I'm just
making
looking.
that point.
I'm just looking at Krishnapedia's comment on the chat board. I guess she's referencing the winter I mentioned where we only got 5 inches at Central Park a few years ago, and she says, "I remember that winter. That was boring." LOL.
Yeah. And on that note, let's go back to last night's Briller Jeopardy, which we didn't finish because we did 5 cities and we got 5 left. So I will bring that up and give me a moment while I find it. Where areas? Okay.
And we're still thinking well for Mother Briller, who, according to Scott, has contracted COVID. So we all hope that she comes through it okay.
Yes, absolutely. So we send all our best to Scott and Mother Briller. She's got to get back on her feet. She's got things to do. All right. So last night's, in case you weren't here, of the following 10 cities, the average snowfall, the national average, is 28 inches. Okay. So we went through the first 5 cities, and you don't have to guess the number. You just have to know whether is it higher or lower than 28. Okay, higher or lower than 28. So the last we're going to start off tonight, Joe, with Philadelphia. Philadelphia.
Now we know that in the last 30 years, New York City is now about 30.6 inches average snowfall for the typical winter season. I'm sure that Philadelphia is probably below that. What is the average? 28 on the national scene?
28.
I'm going to say that Philadelphia is below that. I'm going to say something more like I don't know, like 20, 25, 24, as opposed to the 30 for New York?
Well, everybody on the chat board, except See the Whole Truth, everyone is saying below. No, now Joe Z says above. But that's 2 out of everybody else on the chat board, and the answer is lower. It's below. It's Philadelphia average snowfall is 23.1, and actually Philadelphia is kind of in a funny spot. There's a if you plot out the normal snowfalls across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and the Hudson Valley, southern New England, and Long Island, there's actually a snow hole that covers southeast PA and parts of southwest Jersey and southeast PA and a small portion of south central Pennsylvania, because if storms that come in from the west, a lot of the precip doesn't make it over the mountains, so it dries up. And when storms redevelop to the east, they usually develop too far east to impact Philadelphia. There's also another snow hole in eastern Connecticut and western Rhode Island, where the normals actually go down. I'm sorry, in central Connecticut, central and into eastern Connecticut, where the normals actually drop by several inches and then rise again as you go further to the east, where they're more likely to catch developing storms that move out offshore. The next one.
Did you say 23.1?
23.1.
Okay, I remember well being on duty the night of the megalopolitan snowstorm of February 11th and 12th, 1983, and watching the special weather statements coming out from all of the weather offices in the Northeast and from Philadelphia. I believe, now I may be wrong, but probably not by all that much. I think they got something like 24 inches in that one single storm. And the final statement from the Weather Service in Philadelphia headlined, he said, "This is one you'll tell your grandchildren about," with all the statistics about Philadelphia picking up like 2 feet of snow in one. And that basically, if it's 23.1 now, that was basically the whole winter snowfall in one sitting, that storm in 1983. So that was a memorable storm. And I'm sure that all of you who are on the chat board now, well, not maybe all of you, but most of you are probably saying, boy, we sure wish we could get something like that again this winter. Joe, keep this on tape, this particular, make a note of it, the 18th of October. Easy to remember for me because it's my son's birthday. But if Philadelphia does get a 2-foot snowfall, we have got to find a way to repeat this particular segment and put it up there so that everybody remembers this particular segment of 2 feet for Philadelphia. Will it happen this year? I don't know. Joe doesn't know. But if it does, we remembered it from 83, and maybe it'll happen again in 2023. 2023. So that means that this upcoming February will be the 40th anniversary of that humongous snowfall. Maybe nature will find a way to celebrate that this particular winter in Philadelphia.
Now, Alfred Phillips, who's not on the chat board tonight, he's here from time to time, and he watches from Wainwright, Alaska, on the North Slope. So this is especially for him. Barrow, Alaska. Barrow, Alaska.
Oh. Well, you know, I would suppose it's very cold up there in Barrow. What are they at? 71 degrees north latitude.
Uh-huh.
And when it gets cold, they say sometimes it gets too cold to snow. So you would not expect it gets cold, but maybe it doesn't snow all that much up in Barrow.
Especially once the Arctic freezes.
Right.
Once the Arctic Ocean freezes, there's no moisture source or very limited.
So I'm gonna say certainly below 28 inches. I think it may be well below that. Maybe something like only 15 inches or something along those lines.
Remember though that that's probably one of those places where they've recorded snow in every calendar month.
That's true. But still, if you only receive, let's say, an inch every month, then that's 12 inches, maybe a little bit more for December, January, February, maybe. I'd still say it would fall below 28 inches.
Well, Mark Latfelter says under, and so does Johnny Quest. But Mark DeCara says above. Johnny Sachs says lower. Steve Lapointe says lower. David Fuller is below. So is Debbie Carroll. Brutus says sheesh. I don't know. I don't know. Higher. Christopher Alley says above. William Uber says below. Christinapedia says below. James Volpe says below. Frank Riccio says below. Joe Z says below. David Carter, interestingly enough, gives the correct answer, which is above, but not much above. Okay.
Really? So they do
Yes.
get more than 28 inches?
Yes, but not
In
much.
Barrow?
Not much more, Joe. They get almost as much as New York does. The average snowfall in Barrow, Alaska, is 31.8.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Now,
I would
again,
have got.
it can snow there in almost every month of every calendar month. So, you spread that 31 inches out over 12 months. Most of the events up there are probably small events. They don't get 2-foot blizzards up there. 2-foot snowstorms. They get blizzards up there, but not. They don't get 2-foot snowstorms. Omaha, 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 Omaha. Welcome to the Peytonverse. Omaha.
I don't know. Do we have a mutual? Get it, Joe? Mutual of Omaha? No.
Right.
All
No.
right. 28 inches is the national. What would Omaha get? I think, you know what? I think that Scott has. This is the loaded question. He asked for whether it's above or below for all of these cities. I think Omaha might be the one place where it is 28 inches. So I'm going to say 0. I'm going to say it's pretty much right there for annual snowfall in Omaha.
Okay. Well, we are now in Omaha, and Northern Grace points out that Omaha does get a lot of mixed precip events. And William Uber says they get snow there in October and November, sometimes in March and April too. Joe Z says above. William Uber says above. Christinapedia says above. Leon Probitsky says Nebraska blizzards. Jose Garcia says way above. See the Whole Truth says above. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The answer is for Omaha, it's above, but not by a lot. Just slightly above. 31.2 for Omaha. Reno, Nevada, or Nevada. Reno. Now you want to? I'm going to bet that Joe gets this right. Reno.
Reno. Why would you say that? I mean, I've been to Las Vegas.
Why would I say what?
That I'm going to get this right.
Well, no, it's a gambling city. You want to bet?
Oh. So, all right.
Bad joke, but it's a Tuesday night with no weather going on. My brain is fried. Reno.
Well, it wouldn't be boxcars, and it wouldn't be double nickels, and it wouldn't be what's double 4?
Oh God, I forgot. I used to know them all.
The bottom line of it is
I wasn't allowed to say it on the air. That was another thing
that
I got not that I got in trouble for it, but they told me not to say it anymore.
That's so stupid. And I actually borrowed some of those from you when I was on television. In fact, I was at the Westchester Country Club with the sports guy Walt Fowler. We were doing coverage of the weather during one of the opens that they had there, and I was stopped by a couple of cops as I was coming into the country club, and the guy said, "Say it for me, Joe. Say it for me." I said, "Why?" He says, "What do you say when it's 55 degrees?" I said, "Oh, double nickels." And they both started like, "Yeah, Joe Ray." And I was murmuring to myself, "Thank you, Joe Cioffi." 28 is the average for the national average. I'm going to say that Reno is below that. In fact, since we're on this thing with 66 and 55s and 45, I'll say 22. 22 inches for Reno.
So you say below.
I say below. I say below, and you say it's high. Ah,
Okay, I'm just looking. Double fours, by the way, is referred to in dice as a hard eight.
oh, okay.
Okay,
You know, I don't think I could have said that on television.
right. Oh, here's some more of them. I know we're getting sidetracked here. Some of these are funny. Let's see.
So
So
double two would be what? Double deuce? Is that what we would call that,
uh,
or?
double deuces. You could call it double deuces, or it's a ballerina apparently.
Oh,
Um, uh,
dance ballerina
yeah,
dance
these
and do
are
your pirouette in rhythm with your aching heart.
yeah
Nat King Cole.
these are like some new names. Like a 4 and a 1 is called a little Phoebe. I have no idea why that's the case. Uh, so a 4 and a 4 is called a square pair, and a 4 and a 6 is called a big one on the end.
Oh,
You know, I guess they came
no.
up with a new set of names because box cars for double sixes is probably something to throw back to the 30s and 40s. Okay, I'm sorry. So back to Reno. Um, uh, Mark got Gladfelter above David Carr. Oh no, that's the old one. Okay, hold on. That's right. A little Joe is a 3 and a 1 is a little Joe. Okay, I think. Um,
I remember in a Gomer Pyle episode, Sergeant Carter yelled out, "Little Joe from Kokomo."
yes. No, Bill. Double sixes are box cars. I don't know. It's not double fours. Okay. Anyway, let's get away from the dice. We're talking Reno. David Fuller below. Mark DeCara above. Chuck Cardillo below. And yes, Bill, you have to watch Abbott and Costello. That's a good advice for everybody. A real education. We have to definitely get a real education when watching the brilliance of Abbott and Costello. A cup of Joe is coffee. Yes, we got that. Okay. Reno, to move it along, since we've gotten now on to sidetrack to dice, Joe is below at 25. So the last one, 25.1. So the last one tonight is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Harrisburg, PA.
Well, you know, New York is 30. Philadelphia is 22, we said. And we said that Philadelphia is in basically a hole. So I would have to think that Harrisburg is probably, along the lines of something like a 30 or whatever, or above 28. So I'll say above.
Uh, See the Whole Truth says above. So does David Fuller. Leon says below. Northern Grace is above. Dennis Cassie is below. Chris Alley is above. Johnny Quest is above. Steve LaPointe above. Brutus above. Louis Orizio below. Debbie Carroll above. Johnny Sachs Harrisburg above. David Fuller above. Frank Riccio above. Jacqueline Baxter above. Josie below. Christina Petey above. Mark G above, Howard Hassel below, slightly above for Mark D42, and the answer is above. It is at 34.3 for Harrisburg. 34.3.
I've always noticed, and have you noticed this, Joe, that when we have an impending winter storm and we always look at places to the south and west, Philly may be like 1 mile in snow, but it always seems like Harrisburg is always heavier, like a half or even a quarter, in terms of visibility and snow. They seem to be, as much as Philadelphia is in a hole in terms of snowfall, it always seems to be that the Amish country, Harrisburg, that area, is seemingly a little bit above. Thank you, Leon Probitsky, for hitting Super Chat, and the Fox is giving us a thumbs up on the Super Chat icon, Joe. Good job. Good job. Yes.
And on that note, I think it's time to say goodnight. So, everybody, thank you very much for being here tonight. We will be back tomorrow night. What time will we be back tomorrow night, Joe?
We will be back at 7:35.
What time zone are we in?
We're in the Eastern Daylight Time Zone, sir.
Okay.
This reminds me, we're less than 3 weeks away from going back to the time situation that we should be at all year long, in my opinion. and that would be standard time. And we'll get all of the weather data an hour earlier, and hopefully that will be the standard in years to come. Unlike some politicians who are desperately trying to move it so that daylight time is a year-round event. God help us all.
Yes. All right. Have a great night. Everybody have a great and safe night. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7:35. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.